Hey everyone, my name is Sean Cecil, and today I'm going to teach you how you can lead a movement and make change at the societal level. Okay, so I have a lot of people who come to me and they say, I have this great idea, I have this great philosophy, I want to bring this change to the world. I want to have an impact at a national scale, at a global scale. I want to change society, I want to change the world, right? And people come with these big dreams and these big ideas, and they go, how do I do it? Because it's so far from one person sitting in a cubicle somewhere to being some influencer, to being some person who's on stage, somebody who's leading a movement that's affecting millions and millions of people. So what's the step to get there? How do you do it? I've never actually seen somebody publicly chart out the step-by-step process of how to make it happen. Normally they'll just say things like, well, it's years of hard work and you just got to show up and do it for X amount of time and try to get on stages and all this kind of stuff. And it's not actionable advice where people can go through step by step. So I wanted to give you guys the step-by-step path from anywhere in the world, from just being you, not influencing anybody, to how you can lead a movement and shift a society. It starts with leading yourself. So it's a 4-step process. The first step is to learn to lead yourself. The first step is to learn to control your own emotional state, to be able to make sure that you can keep yourself in balance, to make sure that you can be able to handle a variety of situations, to make sure that this philosophy that you're talking about actually works as a philosophy in your own life and leads you to being happy and secure and stable, right? Where you're not, in crisis all the time, where you're not struggling and hustling. You have to find that sense of inner peace and inner strength for yourself. And if your philosophy brings that to you and it's something that works for you, you've knocked out that first step. The second step is you need to lead one other human being. You don't start out by trying to lead everybody. You don't start out by trying to go on the news. You start out by sharing what you know and sharing your movement with one person, just one person. And you help them make the changes that you've made in your life. And you help them learn to live that way. You bring them to a place of stability and a place of power. And you give them the gift that you had created for yourself. And you start to do that with multiple people, just one-on-one. So first you build the skill of leading yourself, and then you build the skill of leading one-on-one interactions. And you do that repeatedly. You do that with multiple one-on-one cases. Then, once you've learned to do it with multiple people, you've now changed some lives, right? It's not, you haven't changed society as a whole, but you've changed some lives. That's a big step. Now you move on to step 3, which is where you learn to lead groups. This is perhaps you're a manager and you're learning to lead your team. Perhaps you're a speaker speaking to a room of people. But in all cases, you're physically present, right? You're there with these people, but it's not a one-on-one interaction anymore. You're expressing these ideas. You're sharing this philosophy with a group of people, and you're changing more than one life at one time. As I said, this could be at work. This can be, in a paid speaking gig. This could be at your community where you just, get up in a situation and you talk at some coffee shop or whatever it is. But you learn to lead groups of people and you put yourself in the spotlight. You learn to be there in the spotlight and you learn to exist not as you and not being consumed by your identity where it's all about you, but where you're channeling an idea, where you're channeling a philosophy, where you become bigger than yourself. And you share this philosophy that then changes people's lives without you necessarily having a deep one-on-one interaction with any of them. You very well may, because people will come up to you afterwards. They'll want to talk to you. They'll want to learn from you, all this kind of stuff. And that's great. But at this point, you've now gotten to the point where you have leverage. You have scale. And it can start off where you're talking to 5 people. And then gradually, as you go to bigger stages and bigger rooms, it will become 50. It will become 500. And as long as you keep changing people's lives and you keep having that impact, you'll be able to get on bigger and bigger stages. And finally, the 4th step in that process is that you use your philosophy at a level where you're impacting people who you've never met, who you've never seen. You write a book. You start going on podcasts. Now is the time you're existing as an influencer. Now is the time when you're putting up videos where you have thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of views because you've refined this philosophy first in yourself, second in the lives of other individuals, third in groups that are growing, that are ever expanding, and finally in a form where this tribe that you've created, whose lives you have shifted over the course of the time you've been developing this, now have material that they can share with other people who you're never going to have the opportunity to meet. because that's ultimately how you get to that level. You don't get to that level by just creating a book or creating a podcast or creating a video and putting it out into the world and it just grows because it's so amazing. That very rarely happens. What does happen is that the people whose lives you've changed share it. And then when they share it, that changes someone else's life. And then they share it too. Ultimately, what makes the difference is the impact that you have. And as long as you're impacting ever more people, those people are going to want to share the gift that you gave them. And so now you've moved from somebody who's just learning to take care of yourself to somebody who's leading a nation, to somebody who's leading a society, to somebody whose ideas are affecting people's concept of the world, how they see themselves, and how they interact with others. And it's a step-by-step process. And I'm not going to lie, this takes years. This is not something that you do overnight. Anybody who says that you could be an overnight influencer, an overnight sensation is full of it. I actually know a guy who was a pop star in Asia. He was super famous. He was touring around. He had a record deal, all this kind of stuff. And I said, hey man, how did you do that? How did you get there? Because if you look at the papers, if you look at the history, it seems like you were an overnight sensation. One day you had a record deal. He said, Sean, it didn't work that way. Me and these other people, we were working for 10 years before that. We were working our butts off. We were doing everything we could to get that out there for a long, long time before we became that overnight success. And it's the same thing if you want to lead a movement. It's the same thing if you want to change society. It's going to take some time. And so you start with yourself and you start with the people who you can touch, and then you just keep going step by step. And what's going to prove it out, what's going to make this happen, is the quality of your philosophy and the impact that it has on others, and your consistency in just going a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, step by step, instead of trying to make a big jump in one go. I really hope you guys found that helpful. Of course, when I talk about this, I'm assuming that I'm talking to somebody who has something that they're really passionate about, something that gives them a sense of purpose and conviction. If you don't have that, then I would recommend that you find that. It's seriously, it's one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself, is to have that sense of purpose. And the best way to get started doing that, if you don't know where to start, is I do have a free presentation on that subject. You can go find it at www.oculusinstitute.com/workshop. So just go over there. It's a free presentation. It will help you take the first steps on that path to finding purpose. And who knows, maybe you'll end up leading a movement someday. See you on the other side.